My wife Jane and I have been married for nearly 40 years, and we have 4 kids and 7 grandkids. As you can imagine, we've learned a lot along the way. Some of what we've learned came from trying out new things that succeeded, but other lessons came from our missteps and well-intentioned but wrong choices. I hope you'll be able to gain some wisdom from our highs and lows without having to make the same mistakes we did. My life in ministry started with me serving as a youth pastor and then a family life pastor for about a decade. After working full-time in a church during that period, I felt God leading me to start Winning at Home in 1995, and I have been leading the ministry since then. What started out as me traveling and speaking at churches, companies, and nonprofit organizations has now grown into a multi-site ministry that offers speakers, counselors, and coaches to people at all ages and stages of family development, and also produces resources and events geared toward helping them lead Christ-centered homes. In this book, I will partner with several of the credentialed counselors, coaches, and pastors who work with me here at the ministry. They will each contribute to chapters that focus on their specific areas of training and experience. Together, we'll address many of the challenging topics that you're facing as you navigate raising children and teens in a world that doesn't always share our values. This book will address some complex issues that you may not hear addressed in faith-based settings very often. We hope and pray that this will help parents with kids of all ages to handle challenging situations in ways that honor God. Parenting from True Identity. We're starting with identity in Chapter 1 because this lies at the core of how we parent. The following chapters will all focus heavily on your children, but this chapter will primarily focus on you. Because if we aren't intentional about being aware of our own values and priorities, we very likely will unintentionally pass some things along to our kids that we don't want them to inherit. In other words, if we don't understand ourselves as fully as possible, we will probably project our insecurities, triggers, frustrations, and unmet expectations of ourselves onto our kids. None of us mean to do this, and none of us want to do it. But that's the tricky thing about values and priorities. We will pass them on because we will naturally punish or celebrate our kids disproportionately in the areas where we have strong opinions. Think about the parent who is a little too into their child's sports team, or the parent who pushes pageants or certain professions onto their kids. If we as parents aren't okay with ourselves and don't know where our value comes from, we can fall into a pattern of trying to live vicariously through our children, hoping they will accomplish some of the things that we failed to accomplish when we were younger. On the face of it, that might not seem like a bad thing, but all you have to do is go online and search for sports dad or stage mother to find stories and experiences of people who got too carried away and tried to achieve some of the things they hadn't in their own lives with their children. That's not to say that if you don't figure out your own identity, you'll definitely find yourself going that far, but if you aren't reasonably secure in your own identity, then you are likely to project some of your hopes and dreams onto your children in unhealthy ways. This part of the discussion is a nuanced one, though, because it's absolutely possible to encourage your kids to do their best and to excel in sports or school or work without it coming from an unhealthy place in your own heart. In fact, encouraging them to excel at those activities is a good thing. That's what makes this so hard. You have to do the interior work yourself to figure out what your motivations are and where you might be encouraging your kids in a certain direction, not because it's best for them, but in an attempt to make up for your own feelings of inadequacy or lack of success. This can show up in encouraging them to date a lot, to be fashionable, to drive the right car, or any number of things. But this chapter will be less about the specific ways this can play out negatively for your kids and more about how to find security and stability in your own identity. Much of our culture is driven by status or achievement. You may know this by the phrase, keeping up with the Joneses, or the more recent idea of conspicuous consumption, buying things that are expensive, mostly due to the fact that they're expensive. But a good chunk of the people who are using those things, or at least partly doing so, because they are status symbols. It's a simple way to alert somebody else who is in the know that you know about a specific item and that you have the ability to pay for it.